Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Rakshamam Krishna 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 Pahimam Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshamam Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahimam So, as we could see here, this is from the Chaitanya Charamrita, Madhya-lila, and this is the mantra that Lord Chaitanya used to chant as he was walking along the road in the morning, traveling from one place to the other. And the line there, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava Rakshamam, means is praying to Lord Ram, please protect us. So anyway, so now we're going to chant something. Our shloka will be from the Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, text 39, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, 539, Brahma Samhita. Okay, 39, you're getting close. There you go. Okay, so I chose this because this Lord Ramachandra is mentioned in here. Also, Prabhupada gave 2 classes on the appearance day of Lord Ramachandra, one in Hawaii on March 27th, 1969, and the other in Mumbai in 1974. The one in Mumbai, he really didn't say anything about Lord Ramachandra. He just mentioned today's Lord Ramachandra's appearance day, but this one in Hawaii, Prabhupada elaborated, and he actually talked a lot about Lord Ramachandra, described his life story. So a lot of the class will be based on the lecture that Prabhupada gave in Hawaii, 1969, on Lord Ramachandra's appearance day, when he actually, spoke about him and sort of narrated the story. And this was the verse he started off. He started off the lecture by quoting this verse. So we could do it just like we do at the beginning of Bhagavatam class. I'll chant a line and everybody else can chant in response, and we'll do it a few times. Ramadi Mortishu Kalani Amena Tishtan Nanavatar Makaro Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Parama Pumanyo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Shukala Neyamena Tishtan Nan Avatara Makaro Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramapamanyo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Okay, one final time. Ramadi Murteshu Kalani Amena Tishtan Nan Avataram Akaro Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna swayam samabhavat paramapamanyo. Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. All right. Oh, okay. Rama. Tishtan Nana Bhatam Akara Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramapumayo Namadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Vaishnavas. Ramadi Murti Shukhalani Amena Tishtan Nanavataram Akalo Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramapumanyo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Very good. Namadi Shukalani Amena Tishtan Okay, word for word. Rama Adi, the incarnation of Lord Ram, etc. Murtishu, in different forms. Kalaniyamena, by the order of plenary portions. Tishtan, existing. Nana, various. Avataram, incarnations. Akarod, executed. Bhuvaneshu, within the worlds. Kintu, but. Krishna, Lord Krishna. Swayam, personally. Samabhavat, appeared. Paramaha, the supreme. Puman, person. Ya, who. Govindam, Govinda. Adipurusham, the original. Translation. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Ram, Nrsimha, Vamana, etc. as his subjective portions. So that's from the Brahma Samhita. And I'm not going to don't read the purport to that, because it's a little different. But Prabhupada sort of gave a purport to that verse in his lecture. And some of the points he made about that verse is that there are innumerable incarnations of Krishna. They're like, he used the metaphor of like waves on a river. You know, you can't count how many waves there are on the river. He did mention that among them, Ram is one of the principal avatars or incarnations of Krishna. And that's why he's mentioned specifically in that verse. But when we were doing the translation, you notice I said, etc. even, because it says Ram Adi, which means beginning with Ram, but there's innumerable. But Ram is the principal one. So Prabhupada, in his lecture, he mentioned that he gave as a date for the appearance of Lord Ramachandra, he said a bit over 2 million years ago. That's the date Prabhupada gave. He analyzed it. He said that Lord Ramachandra appeared sometime in the beginning of the Treta Yuga, around that period. And in this round of millenniums, you know, generally the order is Satya, Dwarpa, Treta, Kali, but in this particular millennium or round of millennium ages that we're in, the Treta and the Dwarpa got flipped around. So in the Dwarpa was the one before Kali, and that lasts for 800,000 years, and before that is Treta Yuga, that lasted for 1,200,000 years. So, as I said, Prabhupada gave the date approximately 2 million years ago for the appearance of Lord Ramachandra. And the details of his life are in a book, Vedic literature, called Ramayana, which I'm sure we've all heard of. And it's mentioned there that he took birth in a place called Ayodhya, which is in northern India, and it's about 500 miles northeast of Delhi. And it's also a dham, Ayodhya Dham. And he took birth on the 9th day of the waxing moon. So Navami refers to that 9. So before I kind of get into some of the details about his life, I'm going to read something from a book that was written by Sadaputta Prabhu, where he talks about the plot. It's a subsection of a chapter. It's titled the Plot of the Ramayana, and it gives us like an overview of the reasons why, the specific reasons why Lord Ramachandra appeared, and it's interesting. He does a good job. It's very interesting. So I'll read this. It says, the basic plot of the Ramayana is that a powerful being named Ravana had taken over a region called Lanka on the surface of this earth. And from that base of operations, he was causing considerable trouble to many different groups of beings. For this reason, a group of devas, Gandharvas, and sages who were concerned with affairs on the earth gathered together and made the following appeal to Lord Brahma. O blessed Lord, having been favored by thee, the Rakshasa Ravana perpetually troubles us, since thou hast granted a boon to him. And we are helpless and forced to endure his fearful oppression. The Lord of the Rakshasas has inspired terror in the 3 worlds, and having overthrown the guardians of the earth, he has even humbled Indra himself. Provoking the sages, the yakshas, Gandharvas, Brahmanas, and other beings, he tramples them underfoot. He who has become insufferable through pride, being under thy protection. Okay? So that's the demigod speaking to Lord Brahma. And it goes on to say here, so this is Lord Brahma's response. He says, here is a way of bringing about the end of that perverse being. Quote, may I not be destroyed by Gandharvas. This is what Ravana requested. May I not be destroyed by Gandharvas, Yakshas, gods, and Rakshasas, was Ravana's request. But thinking man to be of no account, he did not ask to be made invulnerable in regard to him. Therefore, none but man can destroy him. So, and then, now this is Sariputa's comment about it. It says, Ravana thought that human beings were completely insignificant, and this gives us another clue as to why he did not particularly concern himself with them. But this turned out to be his downfall. Following the advice of Brahma, the assembled celestial beings asked Lord Vishnu to incarnate on earth as an apparent human being to slay Ravana. Lord Vishnu agreed and took his birth as Ram, the son of King Dasarath of Ayodhya. In due course of time, Ravana learned about the beauty of Sita, the wife of Ram, and he devised a plan to abduct her. This created a conflict between Ravana and Ram, and eventually Ram slew him and with celestial weapons in a great battle. And here's an interesting point now coming up. It says, this brings up another point concerning human beings. From the point of view of celestial beings such as Ravana, humans are utterly inferior and unimportant. Why then did Lord Vishnu, the original source of Brahma, and all the Devas agree to live among them as one of them? The answer is that according to Vedic literature, the human form of life is uniquely advantageous for making spiritual advancement. Subhuman forms of life lack the intelligence required for spiritual contemplation, and superhuman beings tend to become wrapped up in the enjoyment of great power, beauty, and longevity. But the human form, with all its trials and tribulations, provides a gateway through which the soul can readily ascend to higher spiritual stages. Since the primary concern of Lord Vishnu is with the destiny of the soul, it was natural for him to be concerned with the human race. So that's kind of a nice explanation of why Lord Ramachandra appeared here on earth. So now getting back to the lecture that Prabhupada gave and giving some details about his life. So one very significant turn of events in the life of Lord Ramachandra took place when he was just young adulthood. You know, he was just about getting ready to be coronated. You know, his father, Maharaj Dasarath, was older. He had two wives, Maharaj Dasarath, Kaushalya and Kaikeyi. And so they were co-wives. Kaushalya was older and Kaikeyi was younger. It wasn't like Kaushalya was out of favor, like, you know, in the case of Dhruv Maharaj, what were the two? Suniti and Suruchi. So Suniti was kind of out of favor, you know, with Maharaj Uttanapada. But this wasn't the case. This is not specifically stated. This was the case with Lord Ramachandra. She was just the older wife, and the younger wife was Kaikeyi. So he had four sons: Ram, Lakshman, Shatrughna, and Bharat. Right. So definitely Ram was the son of Kaushalya. So anyway, what happened was, at some point, this Maharaj Dasarath, he had a disease. It's called Whitlow. Prabhupada mentions it in the lecture. It's like a virus, and it generally affects a person's fingers. It's like a virus. It kind of sets in between the fingernail and the skin. So it's very painful, and he was suffering from that. So Kaikeyi, the younger of the two wives, she was taking care of him, helping him while he was afflicted by this disease. and he was very pleased. She did a good job of looking after him. So he was very satisfied, and he offered her a boon. He said, thank you. I'm really pleased by the way you've taken care of me and helped me through this. I'd like to offer you a boon. And she said, okay, yeah, thank you very much, but I won't ask right now. I will, at the right time. When I need it, I'll ask for it. So he said, okay, that sounds reasonable enough. So, that was that. So some time passed, and then what happened was, as I mentioned, Lord Ramachandra, Dasarath wanted to retire. He was old, he wanted to retire. And Lord Ramachandra was the oldest son. So that's the way it worked, that the oldest son, would become the next emperor or the next king. So he was meant to be coronated, and it was like everything was set in place. Actually, it was supposed to happen the next day. He was supposed to be coronated the next day. The people, he was no stranger. Everybody loved him already in the kingdom. His fame and glory was spread throughout the kingdom. They were making all sorts of preparations to install Ram as the next emperor the next day. They were decorating the entire city. They're going to have a big festival. It's going to be a big celebration, and everybody was kind of all ready for it, making arrangements. And okay, so what happened though was that KK, she had a maid servant. Her name was Mantra, like that. Am I pronouncing it correctly? And this lady was a little bit wicked, evil-minded. So she got in the ear of KK, and she started, poisoning her mind, feeding her with thoughts like, what's going to happen, right? If Ram gets coronated as king, your son's just going to be nothing. He's going to be, and you're going to be nothing. And of course, Mantra was thinking, I'm going to be nothing, and that's really where she was coming from. So she poisoned Kike's mind. She got Kike's to think that, yeah, she's right. She's making some sense. If Ram gets coronated king, what's going to happen to my son? What's going to happen to me? Anyway, was unfortunate. But this lady was successful. So KK, one day before Ram was meant to be coronated, comes to Maharaj Dasarath and says, hey, you remember, you offered me that boon, right? And you said I could take it when I wanted it. And he said, yeah. I said, what would you like? What is it? She said, well, I would like that my son, Bharat, become coronated as the emperor instead of Ram, and that Ram has to go out to the forest for 14 years. And Prabhupada comments in the lecture that, same, he says, the human, how do you refer to it? Human psychology is the same. She's a politician. She thought that, okay, it's not enough that just that her son gets coronated, because if he gets coronated, well, the very next day Ram could kind of rock in with all his armies and just, do a coup, take over. So just to be on, to protect against that, she made that stipulation that Ram has to go out to the forest for 14 years. So Datharas, his response was, in Prabhupada's words, he says, it is a big demand. That's how Prabhupada referred to it. It is a big demand. But he agreed. Maharaj Dasarath agreed that, okay, this will happen. Because he is, he was a Kshatriya. And one of the things that Kshatriyas have a word of honor. If a Kshatriya gives his word, that's supposed to be binding. They never refuse a fight. If somebody challenges a Kshatriya, they'll always fight. They're always, they're very charitable. There's just certain qualities that a Kshatriya is meant to always live by, and that was one of them. But anyway, so he gave his word that, that would happen. So then he called Ram. And he told Ram, okay, your younger mother is making this request, and I made this promise to her that, I offered her a boon, and she's asked, this is her request, so I have to ask you to do that. And Ramachandra's response was, yeah, okay, no problem. I'm ready to go. He exhibited two things. He exhibited two very amazing qualities. One is, the great virtue of being very obedient to his father. He was like an ideal son. he was prepared to honor his father's request to the point of renouncing, which is the second quality. He exhibited renunciation. He renounced the whole kingdom. He was the next day he was meant to be coronated as the emperor, and there he is, just on the request of his father, obediently agreeing. Okay, yeah, sure. If you want me, if you need me to go out to the forest, I'll do that. So that was it. He agreed to do it. Dasharatha wasn't happy about that. He was heartbroken, and as a matter of fact, when Ram left for the forest, Datharas passed away out of heartbreak. He just was so unhappy about having to do that that was it. He just left his body. Anyway, so Ram agreed, and so the word got out that that's what was going to happen. So he was approached by Lakshman, his brother, and Lakshman said, I heard you going out to the forest. You're not going to get coronated. You're going to go to the forest. And he said, yeah, that's right. Well, I want to come with you. And Ram said, no. He said, no, that's what I want to do. He said, well, okay, if that's your choice, if that's what you want to do, okay. So Ram agreed that Lakshman could, go out to the forest with him. And then Sita approached him, and she said, I want to go out to the forest. And Ram tried to discourage her, explain, no, it's not the forest is not a place for a young woman. It's very difficult out there. It's difficult to live out there, and it's dangerous. Ram was actually already at that point when she was asking, he was anticipating, no, something could go wrong. Aside from it being very uncomfortable, it's a dangerous place. There are rakshasas and demons and so forth. You could be kidnapped or something like that. So, but she insisted. She said, no, it's my duty as your wife to accompany you wherever you go. And if you go to hell, I'm prepared to go to hell with you. So, he could understand, yeah, she was mentioning it was her duty, but it was also a lot of love there. So he complied. He said, okay, you can come. So they went, Ram, Lakshman, and Sita went out to the forest. And so sure enough, what Ram expected or was concerned might happen. Ravana caught wind of what was, that they were out there, and he knew how beautiful Sita was, and he made a plan, to trick Lakshman and Ram, to be away from Sita so that he could kidnap Sita, which he successfully did. And so, Ram found out about this because there was a bird, Jatayu. He was, I think, king of the vultures. Yeah. So he saw when Ravana was trying to, making his getaway with Sita on his chariot there. So he kind of tried to come to her defense. He tried to attack Ravana, but Ravana was very powerful. It's actually described that he was, 10-headed. So Sariputta makes the comment here, not saying that he wasn't 10-headed, but his body was endowed with mystic powers or siddhis, which enabled it to transcend the limitations of ordinary three-dimensional space. So he was very powerful, So he was able to defeat Jatayu, and Jatayu fell to the ground. I think he cut off one of his wings. And Lord Ramachandra and Lakshman, before Jatayu actually left his body, they appeared on the scene, and Jatayu was able to tell him what happened. So, Ram knew now, okay, this is what I got to, this is what I'm up against now. And the child left his body. Lord Ramachandra performed the last funeral rites. So, now another significant point is that Lord Ramachandra, at that point he decided, okay, I have to rescue my wife. I have to rescue my wife from this Rakshasa Ravana. But it's been, I don't know if the idea was even entertained or not, but he did not go back to his kingdom to get his army. One might think, well, okay, we made that promise, we'd stay out in the forest for 14 years, but this is something extraordinary, exceptional, so I got to go back and get my army. And no, he didn't, because it was part of that vow. Okay, he agreed he would go to the forest for 14 years, so he didn't entertain the idea of going back to the kingdom and getting his army, but of course he needed assistance, so he made an army of the Vanaras, who were like something like monkeys. They're not exactly monkeys, but they were living in the forest, and so he kind of made a whole army of them, and he was able to cross over the ocean, between Cape Comorin, I believe it is, and Sri Lanka. There's a spot there, and as Judah Karma was mentioning yesterday, there was one point, in that endeavor that the ocean wasn't cooperating in some way. So Lord Ramachandra glanced upon the ocean, it got really heated up, and then the predominating deity of the ocean came and was ready to cooperate. So anyway, Lord Ramachandra was able to put stones in the ocean that floated, and they were able to cross the ocean in that fashion, and basically declare war on Ravana and all his brothers and his armies and everything. And he was very powerful. Prabhupada mentions that he was like a modern day materialist. He was like equipped with he was a high-tech demon, so to speak. He had stolen a Vimana from his brother, who I can't remember if it was Vayu or Kuvera, but it's called Pushpaka Vimana. He had a very powerful Vimana, and he had a lot of weapons and things like that. So anyway, and Ram and his army, they were just bows and arrows, sticks and stones, and but they went. So anyway, so everybody knows how the story goes. I mean, of course, then there's Hanuman and his role in the whole thing, but the Rams was victorious. So it's kind of like a real example of how good triumphs over evil. This is perhaps like a classic example of that. And then after Ram conquered Lanka, Sri Lanka, he one of Ravana's brothers was a devotee. His name was Vibhishana, and he actually defected from Ravana's camp and came and joined forces with Ram. And when Ram was victorious over Ravana, he became the emperor there. Ram didn't, occupy. He wasn't interested in like taking over the country. He just wanted to rescue his wife and punish this Rakshasa. And then after that was accomplished, Vibhishana was installed on the throne. And then it's mentioned, Prabhupada mentions in the lecture that after 14 years, Ram returned to Ayodhya. So I don't know if that means he spent additional time in the forest after he defeated Ravana, or it was 14 years in the forest before that whole thing happened. But anyways, after 14, he fulfilled that promise that he was in the forest for 14 years. After 14 years, he came back, and Bharat at that time, he had never really assumed the throne. Bharat never really, he wasn't happy about the whole thing. His mother might have been happy, or maybe not, but Bharat definitely wasn't happy about that whole turn of events, and he chose to, he carried on the administration because Ram asked him to do that, but not as the, emperor, not as the king. He just, did it from another type of position. So of course when Ram returned, he was installed on the throne. And so a couple points about that is that, Ram is kind of glorified as the ideal monarch. And so, some significant things about that, like it's, he was a benevolent despot. The word despot means absolute ruler, and it generally has a negative connotation, like somebody who's exploiting. But the word just plainly, it just means absolute control. So Ram was and monarchs at that time were despots. They had absolute control, but he was benevolent. Previously these rulers, such as Maharaj Yudhisthira, Maharaj Parikshit, and Lord Ramachandra being the supreme example, totally benevolent. And they're interested in elevating the upliftment of the subjects, elevating people to higher levels of spirituality. And that was the case, of course, with Lord Ramachandra. And it was like, make an analogy, just like at the time of initiation, the spiritual master, he takes the karma of the disciple. And the disciple agrees that he's going to follow the instruction of the spirit. So in other words, it's reciprocal. It's not just like one party is doing something and the other party is doing that. It's not like just the citizens are following all these rules and regulations and the emperor is doing nothing. No, they're in a relationship. The emperor is sacrificing. It's a difficult job to be the emperor of a kingdom. He's taking responsibility. Just like a father in a family takes responsibility to bring his children up properly, to educate them and to inspire them by his own example, and then to see that they get, try to help them get properly situated in life. Same thing. But obviously, if you're the emperor, it's on a much bigger scale. So it was like a very big austerity, for somebody to be. It's no small thing, So Lord Ramachandra was like, that's why he's glorified as the ideal monarch, Ram Raj, because he had that mentality. He had that mentality of, I'm going to, educate the citizens as to what is, the real purpose of the human form of life. I'm going to inspire them by my own example. I'm going to show the example of how to live like a perfect human being and a dharmic person, fulfilling all the duties of the monarch, like that, of the Rajarsh, the king. And then I'll make sure that everybody's properly engaged. Big responsibility, big responsibility. So that's why, to this day, you still hear about Ram Raj, because the people, they were like inspired by that. Wow, what a personality. Here's somebody, great, powerful personality, intelligent, and he's a well-wisher. He's all about trying to help us. That was, that's what the monarchs were, and particularly Lord Ramachandra back in that time. And then once again, that's why to this day, it's referred to as Ram Raj. The ruling of Ram was, the ideal, because he had that quality. So that's all I have to say. So there's a lot to say about Lord Ramachandra. That's all I have to say. And does anybody have any questions about what I said? And then we could take, if somebody has something, some pastime they'd like to share, or something else they'd like to bring up, we could do that, because it's a fast, and it's 8:30, no breakfast anyway, and so we got time. So anybody have any question about any of the points I made to start off with? Yeah.
We were hearing about the different qualities of Lord Ramachandra and how he was the perfect example in many different ways. So one thing that you mentioned, that his benevolence, like something that I got from that, you didn't mention it, but we usually have a saying, charity begins at home, right? Mm-hmm. But it sounds a little bit, in one sense, like mundane, like materialistic. Because I was thinking about how he himself, being so benevolent, that he sacrificed himself to the point that when he disguised himself going around, and he found out that some low-class man was finding fault in Lord Ramachandra's marriage with Sita at the time, that when he heard this and he found out, oh, somebody's speaking like this about me, okay, he banished his wife, Mother Sita, which is very painful, and ordinary people cannot understand this. It's like, how is it that Mother Sita has been, sent, vanished? It may appear that it's like, like a husband can do that, but he, again, benevolence, is like he sacrificed himself for the well-being of the entire universe. detached renunciation, and for a, you can say, a greater cause, for the well-being of
Yeah.
humanity.
Well, I mean, it wasn't like he was just thinking like, oh, you know, I don't want to be criticized. No, it's like, you know, he was ideal monarch. He was showing the example of the ideal
Yes.
monarch, so that was part of that. But it's also said that in doing that, he awarded her service and separation. So in those, like, there's an exoteric and an esoteric. So ordinarily, it can't be understood, but if you, for those confidential devotees who can appreciate the esoteric significance of that, he was awarding her service and separation. So it really wasn't a punishment. Superficially, it appeared like it was, but it actually wasn't. Archita would like to say something.
Nice presentation, thank you. Just a schedule change I wanted to mention. This morning it was announced that there will be a Bhagavad Gita class, but because of the festival, the nature of this evening's program, we're going to do another talk about Lord Ramachandra from 6 to 6:30, and then there will be the Arti and Kirtan, and then the feast at 7. Just wanted to make that clear. So there's no 7 to 8 Bhagavad Gita class. Now in that time slot, 7 to 8, if devotees would like to chant, and you should, if you read Prabhupada's presentations about Lord Ramachandra, he always said, we fast until evening. Because every year people contact me and ask, why are we doing it in the evening? It's supposed to be noon. Lord Ramachandra appeared at noon. But there are many quotes of Srila Prabhupada saying, on Lord Ramachandra's appearance, that you fast till evening, just like you do for Lord Chaitanya. And the whole day you should hear and chant about Lord Ram. Every time he would say that. Fast till evening, hear and chant about Lord Ram. So from 7 to 8, if some devotees would like to do Kirtan, that's available. 7 to 8, because there's no Gita class from 7 to 8, as usual. Tonight we will do from 6 to 6:30, more Ram Katha, and then Kirtan and Arti, and then the feast at 7. Hare Krishna.
For those of you who don't know, who have difficulty reading, I have recorded the entire Ramayana. You can listen to it, or you can listen to part of it, or whatever you want of it. But it's very easy. It has music, it has sound effects, it has various voice characterizations, and it's a lot of fun.